The meeting by acknowledging the continuing connection of Aboriginal people to country, culture and community, including traditional custodians of this land, the Wadandi and Kaniang people of the Noongar Nation, paying respects to elders past and present. I declare the meeting open at 3 p.m. And just a reminder that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded in accordance with Council Policy EMCP2. Members of the public are reminded that no other visual or audio recording of the meeting by any other means is allowed without my permission as chairperson. While every effort is being made to only record those who are actively participating in the meeting, loud comments or noises may be picked up on the recording. My name is Vivian McCarthy, Shire President and Chair of the meeting, and councillors attending are Councillor John Bailey, Councillor Tyler Hall, Councillor Anita Lindeman, Councillor Amanda McNabb, Councillor Grant Patrick, and Deputy President Councillor Alex Purick. Staff in attendance this afternoon are Nick O'Connor, our CEO, Ross sorry, no, he's not. We've got Michelle Dennis, Manager Development Services, Colin Young, Director of Finance and Community, Lauren Clifford, Executive Manager Corporate, Samantha Farquhar, Administration Officer Corporate Services, and Stuart Eaton, Finance Project Manager. I'd like to welcome everyone attending in the public gallery and also those who are participating via live stream. Apologies, we have one from the Director of Operations, Roscoe Marshall. There are no approved leave of absences. Applications for approved leave of absence. Do councillors have any requests for leave? Sadly, no. I think they're... Sorry. Okay. At the start of each meeting, councillors, we need to resolve to suspend clause 8.2 of the meeting procedures local laws. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Hall, seconded. Councillor Lindeman, all in favour? Thank you. Carried. Okay, moving on to item 3, announcements from the presiding member. And we'd just like to note that at the agenda briefing, we awarded Barbara the Senior Citizen of the Year award. It was a lovely ceremony we had last week, so we thought we'd just put that up in recognition of that. Lovely photo. Okay, and then also a reminder about the extraordinary election being held tomorrow. If you haven't cast your vote, it's now too late to post it, and you need to drop your ballot paper off into the Shire office, and you have up until 6 p.m. tomorrow to do so. Our participation rate, I think, is around 30%. 30%. So if you've still got those pieces of paper on your kitchen bench, make sure they get to the ballot box. Yeah, to the chamber, not the office. Okay, so bring them into the chamber and you have up until 6 p.m, close the voting, to pop them in. Okay. I've got to put these in the order that works with Sam. Okay, there are a number of events occurring in our Shire over the next few weeks, including, and I was so disappointed, I realise I can't go to this, the Brookfest Brainstorm Pizza Party on Monday the 13th of April. And unfortunately it's for teenagers 13 to 17 and young adults 18 to 25. and that's going to be held at the Donnybrook Recreation Centre. It's a brainstorming session to figure out what we'll do, or what they will do, with their Brookfest, which will now be held in September or October. I wonder if we dress down, colour the hair, we might get... The Halls Heritage Tour is also on, and this is a free event in which 5 halls of the Shire will be showcased. People can register through Humantrix, and I think that you'd have to go onto the Shire website, and I'll talk about that in a little bit of time, because there are also a number of other events coming up. The Blackwood River Arts Trail and the Blackwood Film Festival are on 28th of March to the 6th of April. The Donnybrook Apple Festival is on the 4th of April. Donnybrook Station Markets are on the 18th of April. And National Volunteers Week will be on the 20th of May, and that will be held as a community volunteer celebration at the VC Mitchell Centre. And planning a light supper, it'll be from 6 to 8 p.m, with planning for a light supper and keynote speaker, and a band and awards. Now, for all of those events, there's too many to go on about. You can log on to the Shire website, and I've tried it, breaking the myth that the Shire doesn't tell you anything. You can log on to the Shire website and select upcoming events, and there's a plethora, because I haven't mentioned things like the Small Farm Field Day and others. Okay. The announcements haven't stopped there. I'd like to provide an update on the decision by Forest Products Commission to cease paying rates to local shires. And you may recall that the Forest Products Commission has embarked on a $300 million 10-year program to acquire land within a 150-kilometre radius of the FPC processing plant in Dardanup for the purpose of boosting WA's softwood timber supplies. The September 2025 decision to cease paying rates on land they have acquired impacted the Shire of Donnybrook, Balingup 25-26 rates revenue by approximately $9,500. There was a combined impact of $325,000 felt across 7 shires who fall within the radius. The Warren Blackwood Alliance of Councils, representing the shires of Boyup Brook, Bridgetown Greenbushes, Donnybrook Balingup, Manjimup and Nannup, has been coordinating a regional response on behalf of its member councils, together with the shires of Cranbrook and West Arthur. And last Friday, on the 19th of March, the shires received state government's confirmation that the Forest Products Commission will provide sponsorship funding in lieu of rates through to June 2027. The Warren Blackwood Alliance welcomes this outcome as an important step in recognising the impact of loss of rate revenue has had on our communities, and it provides some certainty for our councils as we plan and deliver our essential services. But while this commitment provides short-term relief, it is still important that the shires now work together with the state government and FPC to lock in a fair and sustainable funding arrangement for the future. And throughout this process, I'd like to acknowledge the constructive engagement from the state government, including ongoing engagement with and support from Minister Jarvis. And one more. We are looking for community feedback. There's a consultation open at the moment on the draft community engagement framework, which will be open for comment until 4 p.m. on Wednesday the 8th of April. It's open to all community members, residents, ratepayers, local businesses, young people, emergency and health workers and teachers, etc. We need to know if the framework is clear, if it meets your needs and is accessible, and if you think it could be improved or edited. To have your say, go onto the Shire website and follow the link. Once you get to the communities, to the framework, scroll down and there's a link at the bottom of that page to provide feedback through this digital survey. Okay, that's the end of the announcements. Moving on to item 4, declarations of interest. Division 6, Subdivision 1 of the Local Government Act 1995 states that care should be taken by all councillors, committee members and staff to ensure that a financial or impartiality interest is declared and that they refrain from voting on any matter which is considered to come within the ambit of the Act. Do councillors have an interest to declare? Okay. Item 5, public question time. Do we have any questions from the public? Yes? Lauren will help you out into the podium. He's got the form. And Gary, just state your name and address.
Gary Hatch, 2569 Donnybrook Boyup Brook Road, Mumbleup.
Thank you. And what's your question, Gary?
It's in relation to the proposed plantation at Nogarup, and I believe I was unable to make the meeting last Wednesday. We had our brigade AGM, so but I wanted to come along today because I believe it's getting to a crunch time for a decision. So my question is council satisfied that the plantation proponent for the Nogarup plantation has satisfactorily addressed the concerns of local residents and fire brigade members and been able to mitigate or address their concerns, particularly in relation to mitigating the fire risks to the area?
Thank you, Mr Hatch. While I can't answer whether council is satisfied until debate takes place, I will ask Manager Development Services to respond on whether we think the objections from ratepayers and those have been addressed.
Thank you, Madam President. The matters around bushfire safety have been addressed in the officer report. Water quality has been addressed, but water quantity may not have been addressed. So additional information has been provided to council for their consideration in response to that matter, which I'm sure will be talked about further once debate takes place.
Thank you, Mr Hatch. Are there any other questions? Sherry? And Sherry, if you'd like to say your name and address.
Hello everyone, my name's Cherie Rasmussen. I'm at 1925 Boyup Brook Road in Yabara. My question's actually to do with the plantation as well. And in reference to the beginning of the Preston River catchment, have the other shires actually been advised of this potential planting, as the Preston River affects more shires than ourselves, and to where many of the population relies on the water this catchment collects from the beginning of the catchment area to the sea. So it's a big river.
Thank you. Who would like to take that? Thank you, Sheree.
Answers from Dwyer around what that water catchment is, if that's helpful.
Okay. And then I think the answer is that I don't know about the shires.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just bear with us while we do a bit of collating. No rush. Did you want it on the water?
Sorry, thank you for your question. As far as do we inform other councils, the answer is no, it's not required under the planning legislation. In relation to the question around the start of the Preston River being at that point in Noggara, we did refer some additional questions that came from the deputations last week to the Department of Water and Environment as the subject area experts, because we're not that. And they've indicated, just bear with me where I find it. They've indicated that the lower reaches, hang on, I'll read this bit out if that's okay. The lower reaches of the Preston River is a I'm going to say it wrong, perennially flowing system because of water release from Glenmervyn Dam for the Preston Valley Irrigation Cooperative, as well as net input of groundwater from the superficial aquifer on the coastal plain. It's not recorded as being groundwater fed in the upper reaches, including the headwaters. So that's the information that DWER provided in relation to the catchment and where the water comes from for the Preston River.
Are there any further questions? Thank you. At item 6, presentations, we have no petitions and no presentations, although we do have one deputation at 6.3. Ms Canella Hope would like to present on items, is it both items, Canella? Items 9.1.1 and 9.1.2.
Thank you. Good afternoon, councillors, and thanks for the opportunity to present a second time concerning the 2 Delta plantation applications. I'm here on behalf of Delta. They're a private plantation operator, so not the FCC. Glenn Sampson, the operations manager, he was here with me last week, but unfortunately he's travelling interstate today, so he couldn't be here himself, although he would have liked to have been. But he is, however, watching via the live stream. Several questions were asked at the briefing last week, and as you will have seen, I've emailed councillors some information in response to these. After the briefing, Glenn spoke with, I think it was Kaya, that's right, who spoke on behalf of the Noggorot community. Glenn provided his phone number, offering to come out and meet, basically indicating his willingness to answer any questions that the community might have. Glenn's a qualified forestry expert, including with regards to plantation water use, soils and land capability. They're critical factors in Delta's decisions. But despite this, Glenn hasn't been contacted. Under the planning scheme, plantation is a P permitted use. This is regulated by best practice DFES guidelines that are referred to in the Shire's planning scheme and a comprehensive timber code of practice. The reality is that the planning scheme regime effectively prevents the Shire from refusing the applications, and in our view it also creates some limitations. It really narrows down what conditions the Shire is reasonably able to impose. Although this is the reality, Glenn and Delta have been very open and available, and this is going to continue. Delta's willingly moved the planting back considerable distance, in some parts more than double again what's required by the DFES guidelines for the Noggorot matter. And with Glenn, we've comprehensively tried to respond to all of the submissions, to the draft conditions and to all the various inquiries, including this late matter about hydrology, although we haven't seen any additional comments back from DEWA. This matter of hydrology, it wasn't a key issue in the submissions received, and as Michelle has said, most critically, DEWA, the Water Authority, they have no objection to the applications. The watershed, due to the topography on the subject land, it falls away from Noggorot. The geology here is gneiss schist, good name, a very hard rock with weathered clay, derived soil over the top of it. So this is the opposite of the very light sandy soils in the Nangara Mound, which was spoken about at the briefing last week. Entirely different circumstances to here. The DFES guidelines in hand with the code of practice, these are a risk response, and they're a risk response to more than just fire. So while setbacks, the operational practices, the compartments and so on, also respond to fire, they actually tried and tested environmental response as well. In terms of fire risk, as we all know, this is an inherent part of the Australian landscape. There are vulnerabilities across all of this shire and in Noggorot, regardless of these two plantations. Arguably, and I know people won't agree, the new plantations introduce a managed area on one part of the front towards Noggorot and near to the Mumbalup Brigade in Hill Road. For Noggorot, it's presently an open paddock and that's categorised as grasslands, which is flame zone, so the highest risk category if that was being assessed under SPP for habitable development. So right now on this property, there's no compartments, there's no operational management plan, no resources or risk response compared to the extent that is required for plantation use. Preparing for fire and managing land well is everyone's shared responsibility, and plantations carefully manage their operations and risk. They're designed and managed to protect the environment and the commercial investment. Now, the commercial investment can't be understated either. This is a very slow-growing investment. The compartments, they deliberately minimise the spread of fire if fire happens to occur. Glenn and I touched on it last week. On top of the usual resources, Delta also has its own firefighting resources, as well as access to the shared FIFWA resources as well, all of which bolsters local response in the event of a fire, and that's regardless of whether a fire is in a plantation, because any fire anywhere nearby is a risk to the plantation as well, and that's going to draw a FIFWA, the Delta response. So to conclude, Delta requests Shire councillors approve the two applications, and importantly, we ask you to amend the conditions as has been requested. Conditions of development approval, they have to be realistic and valid, and as we've set out to you, there's various conditions that we've questioned, and we ask that they're revised so that they're fair and reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. Do councillors have any questions? No? Okay. At 6.4, we have no delegate reports. Moving on to adoption by exception. The following items from the agenda have been listed for adoption by council en bloc. I think I'll read them out before we move the motion. 7.1.1, ordinary council meeting held on 25th of February 2026. 8.1.1, the local emergency management committee meeting held on the 4th of February 2026. 8.2.1, the Warren Blackwood Alliance of Councils meeting held on the 10th of February 26. 8.3.1, the South West Country Zone meeting held on the 20th of February 26. 8.4.1, the Audit and Risk Management Committee meeting held on the 15th of December 2025. And 8.4.2, Audit and Risk Management Committee meeting held on the 5th of March 2026. 9.1.3, proposed Upper Capel Station. 9.1.4, living arrangements for homeless. 9.2.1, the schedule of accounts paid as at the 20th of February 2026. 9.2.2, the monthly financial report for the period ending to 28th of February 2026. And 9.3.1, Shire's response to the proposed local government electoral reforms. Would councillors like to move that those items are adopted en bloc and resolve in accordance with each of the executive recommendations? Councillor Lindeman?
Yeah, I'm happy to move, but may I ask a question on one of those items?
Yes.
Just on 3.1, South West Country Zone meeting,
Yes.
there was some information in there speaking of 2018 State Council endorsed climate change policy statement, and they're revising that, and it asks at the bottom for council to endorse feedback on the draft climate change advocacy position by May 26. Now, is that for our council to make comment? Because I think in 2018 we did. So I'm wondering whether this is just part of the South West Country Zone one, or is it individual councils able to make comment? And will we be doing that?
I'll let CEO answer that.
Yes, so look, thanks very much for your question, Councillor Lindemann. I apologise, I don't have the minutes open in front of me. I will review them post this meeting. My recollection was there is the opportunity for each individual council to provide some feedback on that advocacy position or that policy position. And if indeed that's the will of council, then I'm happy to bring a paper back and have a discussion at a workshop.
May I have...
Oh, that's okay. Yep. Okay. Councillor Patrick.
Yeah, sorry, I thought when I read this the schedule of accounts paid, I was hoping for that to be pulled because I did have a couple of questions around the schedule of accounts to be paid as at the 28th of Feb.
You'd like that pulled?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we'll pop that one back on the agenda. So what number was that?
9.2.1. Yep.
Okay, so putting 9.2.1 back in. Councillor Lindemann, are you still happy to move?
I'm happy now to move that. Thank you.
Yep, okay. And the seconder? Councillor Patrick? Anyone, did you want to speak to the motion? Yep. No. All in favour? It's carried. And that takes us straight down to item 9, Director of Operations, and 9.1, Development Application P25070 for the Pine Plantation in Mumbalup. Councillors, we have an executive recommendation before us. Would you like to move, Councillor Purick? And second, sorry.
My apologies. I would like to move this with the amendment that I've requested, which is the exclusion of condition 9, which is the sealing of 50 metres of Hill Road.
Thank you. And would someone like to second that? Councillor Patrick? Okay, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam President. So in speaking to this, I will start with why I have sought the amendment on Hill Road. So some background on Hill Road. It's a Shire-managed road with multiple users. 7 residents with associated agricultural or commercial uses, an existing blue gum plantation and the Mumbalup Fire Brigade, as well as access to the Preston National Park. As of the 23rd of March, the gravel sections are generally in poor condition, with heavy corrugations, which could indicate high vehicle usage. An issue has been identified, which is gravel being dragged off Hurl Road onto Donnybrook Boyatt Brook Road, and Main Roads have identified that the geometry of Hurl Road is the cause. This issue is also further compounded, I believe, by the large gravel parking area where residents access their letterboxes with water running alongside the seal section. So a desktop assessment shows that Donnybrook Boyatt Brook Road was widened some point between 2013 and 2017, and it was at this stage that the Hurl Road intersection was upgraded, likely because the geometry issue was identified and a decision to seal the first 20 metres was made, possibly by Main Roads of the Shire, but that is unknown. That 20 metre sealing has proven to be inadequate, and Main Roads has now requested the first 50 metres be sealed. And the Shire requires the proponent to design, construct, seal, as well as improve drainage to the satisfaction of the Shire, Main Roads, Public Transport Authority and ARC Infrastructure. This is not a straightforward or cheap task. Roadworks alone would require existing pavement to be removed, subgrade and base course prepared and asphalt installed. This task alone would cost in the ballpark conservatively of $36,000. Bearing in mind that doesn't include design, drainage, multi-agency consultation and coordination, nor traffic management. And we just have to ask the Shire of Manjimup about what traffic management can do to project viability. So, problems being identified, gravel being dragged onto Donnybrook Boyatt Brook Road, the cause from Main Roads, Hurl Road geometry. Background, At some point between 2013 and 2017, a decision to seal only 20 metres was made. The proponent wasn't responsible for that decision, but we are now requiring them to resolve it. Whether the pine plantation is approved or not, the decision will remain. The problem will remain. There is gravel currently being dragged onto the road. Ultimately, the responsibility for remediating this problem sits with the Shire, and while this is an unfortunate burden on our already stretched road budget, it's unreasonable that we require a private entity to resolve our problems. So that is why I've moved the amendment. Other than that, the plantation itself, I am comfortable with the recommendations, the other recommendations and conditions set out by the Shire. It does have a land use history of plantation, be it blue gum in the past, now pine plantation, but it is consistent with the land use. So, yep, that is my amendment, but apart from that, I support the proposal.
Thank you, Mr Purick. Just before we go on, it is your motion, not an amendment at the moment. Yep, thank you. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. Yes, look, I agree for the most part with what Deputy President Purick has said. I believe that asking the proponent to seal this particular road based on its current usage and history is unreasonable, not to mention the fact that the actual utilisation of that road by the applicant or the proponent is not going to be for a significant period of time, apart from its small initial use. And the ratepayers are going to be responsible for maintaining that road moving forward. So I believe that amendment is warranted. And so, yeah, support that amendment. And in relation to the rest of the application, look, I think I do appreciate the feedback and the input that's been given, particularly by the Fire Brigade and the community members. With this particular application, I'm aware that if a decision isn't made today, and even if a decision is made in the negative, there is the option for this to go to the SAT, the State Administrative Appeals Tribunal, where they have the option to approve it based purely on its planning merits, not taking into account things that we need or want to be able to support the community further than they would take into account. So I think it's prudent and important for us to put in whatever measures and safeguards we can and approve it accordingly, given that the likelihood of it being approved based on its planning merits alone is probably quite high. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? I would like to ask a question, if I may. The recommendation to seal the road, is that coming from our technical request for feedback from, is it Main Roads? Main Roads referral? Yes.
Yes, that's correct, Madam President. So, yeah, it was a referral from Main Roads. They requested that. In the first draft of conditions as well, which have already been modified, and what Councillor, so condition 8 is dealing with the construction of Hurl Road itself, where it's getting access to the property that currently doesn't have access. That's come from our internal processes where we refer the applications to the various service divisions within the Shire for their feedback on that. If I can just add, because between last week and this week, I had our admin officer do a pretty extensive review, also following a letter we had from the real estate agent about the history of this property, suggesting that it has been a plantation. We couldn't find any approval documentation. We were able to find an old harvesting plan that was approved for locations 212, which is the subject of this application, as well as there's a little skinny block just above this lot between it and the gravel reserve to the immediate north. So this land parcel used to consist of location 212 and 302, and they were all being used as one. So 302 currently has access to the constructed portion of Hurl Road, and that's how the plantation was being serviced based on what we can tell from that previous harvest plan, or it was more of a large vehicle approval or something. It had some funny lingo. Sorry, Damien's not here to correct me on what it's actually called. And essentially that required the proponent to grade and upgrade the road during harvesting. So those kinds of conditions have been applied before, but nothing to do with the intersection with Main Roads.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak for the motion?
I'm going to speak for the motion, if I may.
Councillor Lindeman, yes.
Okay. Always difficult. It's always difficult for me, and then there's this sort of can of worms that I go digging around for. So I'm just going to give you points that I thought about, and that was blue gum and radiator pine plantations have similar total annual water use. The blue gums carries, flooded gums, wattles, etc. They're all susceptible to shot hole borers, but radiator pine is not. They don't attract them to the area. In May 2024, the council approved a project by Woodside that purchased farming land to plant native species for a carbon farming plantation to be non-harvested. This generates Australian carbon credits, but no usable products. However, radiator pine plantations offer significant benefits in carbon offsets due to their high carbon sequential rates. Possible benefits for farmers with the Australian carbon credit units. It is documented that radiator pine grows quickly and can sequester 5 to 10 times more carbon in the first 10 years than newly planted native forests. I think we need to diversify rural economies. Sustainable local products. WA no longer harvests native forests. We need to find alternatives. 140,000 hectares shortfall, and importing from New Zealand and other European countries. Under today's circumstances, a stark warning to be more reliant on our own capabilities and industries whilst having a lesser impact on the environment. I agree with measuring and monitoring groundwater. However, this may not be reliable as we're already in a dry climate, so it's difficult to substantiate what's been used and what has simply not been returned to the aquifers due to reduced runoff. All monocultures have lower diversity, this is true, compared to native forests. Residential construction uses radiator pine products. If we are to be future planners, then optimism is represented in planting a tree you may never see grow or reach its intentional end. All the risk is on the farmer, with the potential future risks from severe climate change, the possibility of not even getting a payoff. With all things weighted, the greater good is to support farmers to stay on their land, sequester carbon, produce Australian product, not relying on thirsty transport costs from overseas or interstate, and ensure the land remains productive. A radiator pine needs 650 mil to 1800 mil a year. An avocado tree needs 1,000 to 1,300 of water per year, regulated and controlled, and a plum tree requires 800 to 1,200. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I will speak to it. My area of concern as councillor is that the one submission put forward by a community member, we haven't as a council been able to support the creation of a nature corridor within the proposed plantation plan. And this request directly supports the environmental aims of LPS 7, but can't be supported by the relevant technical agencies consulted. Hasn't been supported by the relevant technical agencies consulted. So accordingly, as councillors, there are no planning or environmental grounds available to us to impose a nature corridor. However, I note that the DWER environmental advice notes with regards to native vegetation. And I understand that because this is a P permitted use on the land, that we are not allowed to reject the plantation, but we can condition it. And so without being able to condition this corridor, which was the only submission that was put forward for the Mumbaluk plantation, I would like to suggest that the strength of the Mumbaluk community is so strong that I guess I encourage Delta Proprietary Limited, as a new member of the Mumbaluk community, to work together with the Mumbaluk community and explore mutually beneficial outcomes to support the environmental aims of our local planning strategy number 7, and also refer to the DWER advice and make sure that this mutually beneficial relationship is working for your business, Delta's business, as well as for the local community and our environment. And I can assure Delta that you'll be surprised by the knowledge, the resourcefulness and the willingness of the Mumbalup community to make that happen. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Okay. Councillors, we have to put this to vote. Right of reply for Alex.
I will just make the quick comment about the previous land use, where I drew that information from, that being the previous land use as a plantation. So anecdotal evidence from a DBCA employee who attended the site on an operational matter, told me it was a blue gum plantation, and also from a desktop assessment on Landgate viewing aerial imagery, it does show. So that's where I drew that information from, but yep, that is all.
Thank you. So councillors, we need to put this to the vote. We have the executive recommendations with all the conditions other than condition 9 as per Deputy President Purick's change. Those in favour? And those against? Carried. Moving on to item 9.1.2, development application for P25071 Pine Plantation Nogarup. I'd like to move an alternative motion and start with that. Yep. So, sorry, it is just the motion because I'm moving it now. That the consideration that has changed to what I've got here. Okay. All right. Okay. I'd like to move that Council defer making a decision on item 9.1.2 for further advice to be provided to the Shire of Donnybrook-Balingup concerning the following. A, how the proposed plantation will impact the groundwater resource relied upon by the Nogarup town site. And 2, note the following reason for deferral. 2.1, the Council considered there was insufficient information provided to determine the application, and that opportunity should be provided to address the matters outlined above, and requests the Chief Executive Officer to bring a report back to Council within 8 weeks, by May OCM for consideration. Would someone like to second that, and then I'll put in my debate? Councillor Hall. I think that given the Nogarup community's reliance on groundwater, it's my view that there is a need to gain a better understanding of the potential impacts of this application on groundwater. I would like to follow DWER's suggestion that the first step in investigating potential impacts to groundwater may include providing details of the likely depth of the primary taproot for the pine species proposed to be planted, and location and depth of bores used to supply water for residents of the Nogarup town site. Developing a section or sections across the landform that show the relative elevation of the plantation and Nogarup town site and relative depth of primary taproots and bores. This would provide a first pass to assess at what depth the plantation may draw water, to consider if there may be a drawdown effect that could impact existing access to groundwater. Pending the outcome of this assessment, there may be a need to undertake more detailed local studies or to adjust the proposal to mitigate risk. I note the comment by Manager Planning Services that by the time the Council consider this proposal today, the statutory timeframe will have been reached. But this means it will be open to the applicant to refer the matter to SAT as a deemed refusal. This is a risk with any development application. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? Councillor Purick? Sorry, Councillor Hall? Sorry, you seconded. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with what you've raised, Madam President, so far. So my questions in our agenda briefing previously were in regards to lack of information to make a decision. So I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Patrick?
Thank you. Look, not speaking necessarily against it at this stage, and I know it's my only chance to speak, but a couple of questions around it. So, one, do we believe that we will get this information all gathered and put together within an 8-week period, if that's what we're proposing? And two, what are the likely cost implications of undertaking this body of work?
I'll ask Manager Development Service to come back to you, but we won't know the cost implications until we get into it. Manager Development Services.
Thank you for the question. So I did ask DWER as to what, because hydrological studies, there's not any information available in this particular landscape as far as the water, other than the geology under the site is similar to what's under the plantation. So there may be a risk of them sharing the same groundwater supply. And the suggestion from them was doing this, as Madam President used in her reasons for the deferral, is that by having a mapping system, so, you know, getting a surveyor out and determining the level of the location of the bores and the depth of the bores with reference to the height or the elevation of the plantation and the depth of the taproot, and then you get like a cross-section. I'm probably simplifying it a bit too much, but, you know, you've got a cross-section of, you know, if this is where the plantation is and this is where the town site is. If a taproot for a pine is, I don't know, 12 metres or whatever it is, but the groundwater is actually a lot deeper than that, then that can add weight to demonstrating that there's a low risk. But if that's different, then there needs to be further investigation. So I did ask her last week, how likely would it be a condition around hydrology as being valid? And based on the information, it would suggest that it would be difficult because there isn't any studies done, but this is another way of asking for that information as a more general first past the post type situation. So a less, intensive type of assessment. So it'd be involving the community members who have existing bores and getting that anecdotal information from them.
Thank you. That was your question? Did you want to speak to the... No? Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, through the chair, another question, if we could. And there's been no surveys there, so we don't know whether the water's running from state forest to the Preston, the direction of the water.
Sorry, Manager Development Service.
Sorry, I'm talking about underground water, not surface water.
No, so DWER do not have any information on where the water is and what the aquifer, for want of a better description, is in that space, other than that geology is similar. So the fractured rock, the other word that Kennelly used that I've never heard before with the funky sounding stuff as to what the underlying stratosphere or whatever is, it's similar across the site. So there's no existing data of hydrology in that area because it's not a proclaimed drinking water source area. It's not a rights to irrigation water area. So the data that the state government has available for that area is limited.
Thank you. So would anyone like to speak to the motion? Councillor Purick?
Thank you, Madam President. So I am a firm supporter of primary industries in regional Australia as the lifeblood of our economy out here. I was comfortable with the responses from DBCA and DFES on the fire management, and I was pleased to see that the Shire had adopted those recommendations. So from a fire standpoint, I was satisfied. With Nogarup's long history of forestry, I was comfortable with the plantation in the area on that. But with the questions being raised around water security, that was when I started having concerns. And yes, I am a supporter of primary industry in the regions, but not at the expense for such a serious issue as water security on some local communities. Should a groundwater investigation be undertaken and the findings show it will have low to negligible impact on the community of Nogarup, then yes, I could support the motion in its original form. But without that information, I am happy to support the alternative motion.
Thank you, Councillor Pierick. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Right, a reply goes to me, just reiterating my own thoughts. If this information is possible to capture, we should do so. We'll put that to vote, councillors. All those in favour? And
Do you want me to call it? Yep.
Yep.
So, Madam President, Deputy President, Councillor Lindeman, Councillor Hall and Councillor Bailey.
and those against?
Councillors McNabb and Patrick.
Thank you, councillors. Moving on to 9.1.5, the response to a near-miss incident, change of hours, Donnybrook Waste Management Facility. Councillors, we have an executive recommendation there. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Patrick. And seconded, Councillor Lindeman. Councillor Patrick, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Yeah, look, I think this motion's fairly self-explanatory. Ultimately, the need to ensure safety at the site, both for staff and for the broader community. You know, we've talked a bit about bushfire risks and so on, and the location of this facility is surrounded by bushland. I think by changing the hours to ensure that we have people on site, particularly during the truck deliveries and that sort of thing, is makes sense. I think the change of hours, it can be frustrating for community. However, especially when there's contractors involved, you know, things do change and unfortunately will continue to change over time. And the recommendation, particularly around the QR code, I think is a very sensible one. It's moving us more into the modern era and avoiding future ongoing costs around notifications of changes of hours when there's a single source of truth that's easily inaccessible to go to. So look, I think it makes sense and recommend that we support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Lindeman.
Could I ask a question first, please?
No.
Is it the QR code to go onto the tip pass? Is that going to be the only source of information other than maybe some writing underneath that says, or please visit a website? Would that be on there as well?
Who would like to answer? Manager Development Services. You're really filling the gaps today, aren't you?
That's okay. I'll just put the waste hat on now, take the planning one off. So the tip passes currently have the actual hours on, as well as reference to our website for around things like acceptance criteria and things like that. So we can definitely still put, please refer to our website for opening hours and that sort of thing. It will still be published on the gates at each of the facilities. So we'll still have signs on the gates to let people know when they're open. But it's just to avoid the issue that we've had in the past where we've had to change the hours and they're different on the tip pass, and then the attendants have been abused because someone came in the day before and couldn't get in because the hours had changed because that was actually printed on the pass. So it's just to try and avoid that conflict. But we can put whatever you'd like on there, really.
Councillor Lindeman.
Thank you. And just through the President, if I need to put an amendment to this motion that would add the QR code, but or please visit the website, blah, blah, blah.
To be honest, there's we're getting into
In
very,
case of
very operational
intermittent
areas here.
Changes. I understand
Could
that. However, I will say from a personal perspective, my phone is that old It doesn't do the QR code anymore. So,
Can I just ask the CEO to respond first to establish our parameters of our decision-making here?
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
look, there was obviously a bit of email exchange of that, and I appreciate Councillor Purick's perspective. It's different from mine. However, if it's council's will, obviously the matter before you today is really a change to service delivery in the opening hours, which really is, I believe, the remit of council. But if there was an additional assurance required, then I'm more than happy to take that as an action without a resolution.
Did you say without resolution?
Without a
Yeah.
resolution, yeah.
Okay, and did you want to speak to it, or?
well, of course, love rubbish. Work at a tip myself, can verify the hours, can tell you that fires start up and we are breathing in the stuff whilst we're there. And they can run for weeks and you can't put them out. And they're definitely your vapes and your batteries and all that kind of stuff. And every toxic thing you can imagine, including lead, like it's all there. So I recommend that the safety of people, community members, etc., are first. It has to be first. And then working the hours so that you're best prepared for community to visit. Be organised, checking what people are putting in is really important because they'll tell you one thing, but a lot of that stuff's just chucked in. So if everyone was 100%, I'm going to have to say, honest and transparent about what they have and what they're tipping out and putting it into the right areas, there wouldn't be a problem, but that's not the case. So I think this is the only thing you can do to ensure, and I would also mention that generally by the afternoons things really quieten down. People sort of go gung-ho in the morning to get their stuff out, and by the afternoons it starts to simmer down a little bit. So look, just from my experience, I think those hours would work, and for the safety of the community and the workers, I think that's really important.
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. Would anyone like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Purick?
I would, and I apologise if I have caused some confusion in administration, meeting procedural, but I would like to speak against the item as a whole, but also move an amendment to the item. So I'd like to move an amendment now. And that amendment is to include the operating hours printed on the tip pass. So yeah, I'd like to move that and go into debate on that amendment, if that is
I
possible.
think CEO has mentioned that he was happy to take direction on. Did you say happy to come up with a solution?
I guess I stand. But
Sorry.
just be open. So, you know, where and what and how we sort of communicate this change moving forward really is, you know, in my humble opinion, an operational matter. I acknowledge Councillor Purick has an alternate view. At the end of the day, you know, I'm happy to put as much information on the tip pass. As per the officer's report, we weren't looking at putting in the new hours for the reasons that have been explained in the officer's report and also mentioned by Ms Dennis. However, I'm happy to have a discussion with councillors afterwards to get a consensus moving forward.
So, do you still want to raise an amendment?
No, I'm okay, but I would like to speak to my concerns, but I'm happy to work through it with discussion. Yeah.
Okay, well, raise the amendment if you'd like.
That's a pragmatic.
I would like to raise an amendment then, yes. So my amendment is to, do I speak to it now or do I need a seconder before I speak to it?
So just maybe, so I believe that Councillor Purick was happy not to raise it as an amendment, but just wanted to talk to the fact. Is that right? Or do you want to do it as an amendment?
No, I would like to do it as an
Okay, my
amendment.
apologies.
Yes.
All right. So
Right,
will
so
you put the words up on
You
the
do need a
on the screen?
seconder.
Do I
to
need a
the
seconder?
You will. Maybe we
Yep.
just wait till the words go up on the
And the
screen.
amendment is to include the operating hours printed on the tip pass.
Get that up there first, councillors. Right, and a second to that motion.
If there's no second, I'm still happy to second it.
Sorry?
I'm happy to second it to get on the table.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, Alex.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. So I'm moving this amendment to ensure that tip operating operating hours are printed on future passes. And so I was talking to a friend the other day and he made a comment that's really stuck with me. He said, you know, Alex, we stopped doing things that work. Operating hours printed on tip passes work and have done for generations. Users know with certainty when they can and can't access a service. A QR code implies that hours of operation are subject to change. It can create uncertainty, and I believe it ultimately lowers the reliability and the quality of the service. I sent some items through to Nick this morning. So for some users in the rural areas of our community, they don't have access to internet, they don't have access to phone. For them to access a QR code, it would require the purchase of a modern smartphone and a mobile signal booster. They could be on the line for $3,000 odd. It is an added step for regular tip users. I do use the tip on a regular basis. We don't have curbside rubbish collection. It's an added step. I am already checking 3 email accounts, WhatsApp, messenger services, fire rating, dangers. The last thing I want to be doing is logging on to check one more thing. On a more fundamental level, I believe that we should print hours on our tip passes. We should commit to those hours and commit to delivering that service to our residents. I believe this is a greater issue in our modern society with how we provide services, that we take dynamic or agile or adaptive viewpoints to something. We say that as a good thing, but really what that means is the potential for unreliability for changed hours. Printed hours work. We print them every 12 months. We commit to those hours for 12 months. I do understand that there are some changes in there, but in the scheme of things, 12 months is not a long time. I believe there could be greater issues at hand if we cannot commit to delivering a service for 12 months at a time. So I urge you to support this amendment, that we do print the operating hours on future tip passes.
Thank you, Councillor Purick. Councillor Lindeman? Nothing? Would anyone like to speak against the amended motion? Councillor Patrick?
Thank you. I would like to speak against it. Predominantly, so this last year, the Bailing Up transfer station hours changed. I looked at the hours on my tip pass, and during that period, they changed. It's that simple. You know, I still had to go onto a website or something else to try and find those hours, the new hours, and that sort of thing. I think having something that doesn't imply that there's going to be regular and constant change, but what it allows for is get people into a pattern of behaviour to know that if they want to check the hours, there is a facility readily available to them to check the hours. I think I acknowledge that some people live out in regional areas and don't necessarily have great internet reception or anything else, but to me, the issue of travelling however far with your trailer on the back, with your rubbish bins loaded up to get somewhere to find that it's closed for whatever reason is a lot more of a inconvenience than being able to find a way to check the website. I'm not even an advocate for the QR code's neither here nor there, but for me, printing it hard and fast on there. The tip is controlled by contractors. Obviously, those contractors are held into a contract by the Shire, but there are things that are going to impact that. Our current state of affairs with the world may mean that, you know, with the cost of fuel and tip deliveries and so on, there may be changes or additional costs incurred that's going to change rubbish bin delivery days, which in turn could change what the requirements for the tip to be open are. And I think taking into account the fact that things change in the world and giving people somewhere to go as that central source of truth for the change, not a piece of paper that they've got printed, is I won't say old-fashioned, but I would say it's not a modern way to do things, and that given the uncertainties in managing contractors and in the world, having a methodology that's dynamic and available for change without additional cost makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Would anyone else like to speak to the amended motion? Councillor Bailey?
Through the Chair, just some questions there. Look, I can understand both sides of the argument here. There's people there will get to the tip and they'll dump it in the bush on the way home because they're travelling k's to drop this stuff off. Is there a grandfather clause that we put it on the tip passes now, saying that this will be the last year? I mean, we've still got costs and everything else involved, but I'm concerned that people will be coming in, and there's a lot more people down our way with travelling to drop stuff off, although Europe are the same. And I'm concerned that a lot of this stuff will finish up in the state forest, which it is now.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hall?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm speaking in support of Councillor Piurik's amendment. I believe that there is limitations to just a single QR code as a source of truth. I'd support the amendment based on the fact that there should be both, with the by clause of, if in doubt, please check the QR code. Simple. Thank you.
I didn't hear what you said, Councillor Tyler. Because, would you like to go again?
Apologies about the motorbike. No, I was just saying I support the amendment based on the simple fact that you can have both information on. I agree that there should be an online source of truth, and I believe there should be a hard copy to include residents that might not have access to a phone that has that technology. I don't want to reduce the service in any perceived way, so I think having both on the tip pass would make sense, with a little sub-clause under the days and the times to please check the website or use the QR code just as a fail-safe, and I think that should sort it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Has everyone had something to say? Councillor Lindeman, you've already had your chat, haven't you? You did, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Would anyone else like to speak to the amended motion? All right, we'll put that to vote. Right of reply. One day I'll remember it. I've even written it in capitals beside your name.
Yeah, just a few more points. So we are still advertising or publishing operating hours on the tip gates. There are still going to be people that, if this does not pass, don't check the QR code, turn up at the tip, see the hours advertised, see that the tip is closed, coming back the next day and abusing operators, which I believe that will still happen. A comment that Councillor Patrick made about the modern way of doing things, and I would ask, is the modern way of doing things always better? Is the modern way of communicating always better? I am nostalgic for a world I didn't live in. I look to the past and I think there are better ways of doing things that we used to do. Just because something is new does not mean it's better. I would also say, at a fundamental level, the reason I'm moving this is it is a case of we're saying we're going to do something and then we're going to do it. There is no ifs or buts, there is no weaseling out or changing the hours. We are committing to delivering a service for our community, and really that's it, saying we're going to do something and doing it. And that is why I would like to print the hours and say the tip will be open at these hours. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Piurik. We'll put that to vote. All those in favour? In favour of the amended motion?
No, well, to the amendment.
To the amendment.
To the amendment. Yeah.
The amendment reads, future tip passes will have... Sorry, so all in favour?
All right, so Councillors Bailey, Hall, Piurik.
And all against?
Councillor McCarthy, Patrick, McNabb and Lindeman.
So it's that.
So it's failed. So the motion was lost, 4-3. Is that lost 4-3? Is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3? Is that correct voting, councillors? Yep. Motion.
Okay.
So we go back to the original
And so we go
motion.
back to the original motion put forward by Grant Patrick and seconded by Anita Lindeman. Sorry, Councillor Patrick and Councillor Lindeman. Would anyone like to speak against the original motion? Councillor Piurik?
Yeah, so hot loads are unfortunately rising in frequency. They're a challenge for local governments and tip operators. But I believe that the measures proposed don't actually address the underlying issue at hand and penalise the wrong tip users. So happy to be corrected on this, but my understanding is hot loads are generally caused when inappropriate items placed in wheelie bins primarily collected by a rubbish collector and then deposited at the tip, at which case they've been crushed, exposed to oxygen, what have you, and a fire occurs. So, by reducing the tip hours, users without the luxury of verge-side collection are being penalised. I did have some comments about the operating hours. They have been answered by the administration. So I was concerned about the report stating an increase in operating hours during the week, but a decrease on the weekends. So really, residents will still have the same 4 hours per day, bar I believe it's Wednesday or perhaps Thursday, and then a reduction of 1 hour on Saturday and Sunday. Again, though, this does impact those without verge-side collection. I visit a tip on a weekly or fortnightly basis to dispose of my household waste. I believe that measures should instead be taken to educate those doing the wrong thing, those depositing items in verge-side collection bins that they shouldn't be. And if that's unsuccessful, then unfortunately the rate charged for rubbish collection may need to increase. And so for these reasons, I'm not supportive of changing the hours.
Thank you, Councillor Pierick. Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Yes, Councillor McNabb.
When we talked about the response that was provided with the times that we were proposing changing, you talked about the afternoons being the quietest times, but then you've taken off the morning in Saturday. Is that also one of the quieter times to be removed, or is that, yeah? How did we settle on taking off the morning, the earlier start on the Saturday?
By the contractor? Yeah, you
Sorry.
asked the question before.
Thank you, Managed Development Services. Okay,
Thanks for the question. So yeah, I'm sorry it wasn't very clear in the report, and I tried to explain it better in the response. So an hour on the weekend, because it's double time, is equivalent to 2 hours on a weekday. So changing the hours during the week means that we can get an attendant on site before the site opens for those deliveries and to do the startup and everything. And then the changes to the weekend hours were done in consultation with the contractor based on how they see things happening. So 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning's not as busy as 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. So that was the suggestion. We haven't put it out to a vote or anything like that. It was just trying to work out with that minimal cost to the Shire. If we kept the hours the same and increased the presence on site, it had a more than $20,000 implication on the budget. So that's why this was proposed.
thank you. Would anyone like to speak for or against the motion? All right, councillors.
Sorry,
rather
Councillor Bailey.
reply to... Sorry?
Councillor
Sorry,
Bailey.
Councillor Bailey.
Sorry, through the chair, just a question. Those after hours or the double time is costing us a lot of money. Have we looked at Sundays being between 10 and 2 and all that sort of stuff to really save some dollars? I mean, the time is going to be the time. People will know they've got to get there within the time. Would that help us at all, Nick? Has anybody looked at that?
Managed Development Services? Or is, I think it's just...
We did look at some changes when the bailing up facility management contract was up for renewal, and different options were provided to councils. So that time it was deemed to be the same cost, but like cutting your service to suit the costs that you're getting. As far as the Donnybrook Waste Management Facility goes, that still has another 1.5 years on that particular contract. So we can really only, I don't want to say tweak the hours so that the contractor's not having any less payment. like we can't reduce the hours at this point so that his contract value is less. It tends to go the other way. But this proposal that's been presented at the moment is to have a minimal impact on the budget, but to address the immediate risk of the fires happening. And unfortunately, Councillor Pyrrhich's comments about trying to address it, we thought it was a rare occurrence, but Cleanaway is saying it happens across their network every single day. It's not just our residents, it's everyone who just uses it as a convenient tool to get rid of whatever without much thought of what happens at the end. So it's a really challenging one to manage, and that's why this has been suggested to at least address it on site. And if I can just give a shout out to our contractor, it was his quick action on the day that prevented a pretty significant issue happening at the tip. So it was more luck than anything, but at the same time, his experience in moving that burning material pretty promptly pretty much saved our bacon, if that's appropriate to use with waste. Sorry.
Thank you, Manager Development Services. Right. If anyone, sorry, have you got a question or a comment? Okay.
Will there be a corresponding reduction in rates for those with tip passes? So,
Just
because...
trying to understand the premise of your question.
Yeah, so there is a reduction in hours for public access through to tips. So the public have lost 2 hours of that tip access. So they have a lower level of service delivery. So would there be a corresponding reduction in rates associated with that lower level of service delivery?
Manager Development Services.
So currently, if you get a rubbish service, you pay a service charge for a bin service and you get X number of tip passes. If you don't have a bin service, you just get tip passes. Yes, it's considered in the overall rate, but it's very minimal that those people who don't have a curbside collection are actually paying at the moment. And I would contest that this isn't a reduction in service, it's just a change in hours that you can access the tip. You've still got the same number of tip passes you had at the start of the year, it just means you can't access the site for an extra hour on a Saturday and Sunday.
Thank you. I take it, Councillor Lindeman, you have a question?
Question, how I'd love to say lots, but the question would be then the cost of not ensuring safety of workers and community as opposed to the possible perceived loss of hours going to the tip. How would you quantify that?
So if that's a question,
CEO?
yeah, look, maybe I can't quantify, you know, but I think maybe just reiterate what Ms Dennis has said. This has not been, the catalyst for this review was not a service review. It wasn't to look at saving costs. It was in direct result from a incident that occurred that actually was a very dangerous incident, both from a personnel risk, a public safety risk, as well as an environmental risk. There was an ICAM, so an accredited investigation that was undertaken, and the response and the officer's recommendation was exactly as Mrs Dennis said, was to try and mitigate that risk into the future, not a cost-cutting exercise or a service delivery change exercise. So I didn't answer your question, but I'm providing broader context. Yep.
Thank you. Councillors, if there's no one else to speak to the motion, is that right? I'll go back to Councillor Patrick for the right reply.
Thank you. Look, there's not much more to say. I must admit I am surprised that this item's taken more debate and more time on changing the tip hours by a little small amount compared to pine plantations, but still. I think overall, look, it's risk mitigation, it's health and safety, particularly with the changes to the legislation. From a health and safety point of view, we need to do everything we can to ensure the health and safety of people. As the CEO just said, you know, there's an ICAM done, which is an incident investigation, determining that, you know, some changes needed to happen. I agree with Councillor Pyrrhich in relation to most hot loads come from the collections and the rubbish trucks and that sort of thing. But that's the whole point of this, is that there is then people on site when the rubbish trucks get there to be able to support that. So I agree with your point, and I think that supports the recommendation. So I recommend that councillors support it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillors will put that to vote. Those in favour of the original executive recommendation?
Councillors Hall, Lindeman, McNabb, Patrick and President McCarthy.
And those against?
Deputy President Purick and Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, councillors. That's carried. Okay, moving into item 9.2, Director of Finance and Corporate. That's not the same name as that anymore, is it? Director of Finance and Community. 9.2.1 is not in block, so we can look at that. The schedule of accounts paid as at the 28th of February 2026. Sorry?
That's we're wondering what his question.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. Questions first.
Okay.
Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. My questions relate, I've got a couple, but this is the main one I'll just question on today. So there's two EFTs. One is EFT 32538 and 32577, both for refund of gym memberships. Now, the Donnybrook Recreation Centre rules and regulations stipulate no refunds will be given for a cancelled or held membership. Now, I'm not against refunding if there's reasons or purposes. However, it's in direct conflict to the Donnybrook Recreation Centre rules and regulations from 2024 as published.
Yeah, so happy to look into that individually, or those two refunds, but take on board the guidance or the fact that there is an overarching policy that terms and conditions that dictate the refund. I'm not sure whether these were compassionate grounds,
Yeah.
so I can come back to you with that detail, Councillor.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Councillors, you have a recommendation there that you receive the schedule of accounts paid as detailed in the report for the period ending 28th February 26. Would someone like to move that? Councillor McNabb. And seconded by Councillor Patrick. Councillor McNabb, nothing to say. Councillor Patrick, would anyone like to speak for or against? Okay, we'll put that to vote. All in favour? Thank you. Carried. Moving on to item 9.2.3, the annual review of the long-term financial plan for the 15-year period 26-27 to 2040 to 41. I'll move the recommendation as it stands and just make a statement, as I indicated when pulling it off en bloc. Would someone like to second the motion? Councillor McNabb. Okay. I wanted to talk about why this report matters and have it recorded, because it is an annual event and because it's such a significant result. And as we move into the finalising the 26-27 budget, there's a need to recognise, in my view, that recognise and thank Shire staff, councillors and the community for the progress we have achieved together. So following our return to full council in 2023, we commenced our term with an annual budget process for the 24-25 financial year. And it was during these preparations that first term of council were presented with a sobering figure, a 26% gap in the Shire's long-term asset management and renewal funding. This meant that, without change, our ability to sustainably maintain assets and services into the future was at risk. So in response, Council has maintained a commitment to forging a sustainable pathway forward, guided by the Shire's long-term financial plan, and this critical document projects our financial commitments over the next 10 to 15 years. It informs the annual budget process. It identifies a clear and financially sustainable way forward for managing our assets, our service delivery, and our future infrastructure needs. So it's quite a weighty and significant report. This long-term planning is now translating into action because in the 25-26 budget, 2.18 million was allocated to asset renewal, demonstrating a tangible demonstrating tangible progress in closing that 26% gap. The long-term financial plan also confirms that heading into the 26-27 budget, the Shire's rate yield requirement is now projected to be 6.7%, below the sustainable levels. And this is a massive improvement on the 26% gap we faced 2 years ago. So the progress hasn't come easily. Council has used a range of strategies to address the challenge while continuing to deliver positive outcomes for our community. And one key focus has been on securing external grant funding, not for new projects, but for our maintenance projects. And this has enabled important things to proceed, such as the Donnybrook Recreation Centre change room upgrades, the renovations to the Brookhampton Hall, and a new fire station for the Argyle Irishtown Bushfire Brigade, without impacting our own source funds. At the same time, we've had to make a number of difficult but necessary decisions to strengthen the Shire's financial position, including reductions to community grants and donations, which wasn't easy for anyone involved, a full review of tourism and economic expenditure, adjustments to the Shire's workforce plan, all credit to the Shire for carrying that change throughout the last 2 years, and disciplined decision-making to avoid additional capital projects. And then there's also the ongoing asset rationalisation through our asset optimisation project. While extremely challenging, these steps have been vital to restoring a stronger financial foundation. Our story is a positive one. It shows what is possible when we balance the needs of today with our future responsibilities to future generations. And I recall listening to Councillor Lindeman 2 years ago, warning us not to kick the can down the road, and we didn't. We grabbed the can. I'm incredibly proud of the progress we've made. It reflects what can be achieved when we take a long-term view, when we make disciplined decisions, and when we work together in the best interests of our whole community. If we maintain this momentum, the Shire's future is bright, stable and sustainable. So thank you, councillors, thank you, Shire, and thank you, community. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Or seconder? Councillor McNabb. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Lindeman.
Thank you. I'll just give you another one of those profound statements, shall I? I nearly thought about it, but it's that hold fast situation where you make a plan, a long-term plan, and you stick with it. And I really like that that's where we're headed, because it's difficult and there's lots of favouritism, and, you know, in a world that we live, I think political parties are seeing it, they answer to the loudest crew and then they seem to just be obliterated. So I like that we are holding fast, which you can get nicely tattooed on your knuckles. So that's what I would say to continue doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Okay. I have no right of reply. I have no reply. So councillors will put that to vote. All those in favour of the long-term financial plan? And that's carried. Special thanks to Stuart. Thank you. Yeah. Moving on to item 9.3, Chief Executive Officer, and 9.1.2, the Code of Conduct for Council Members, Committee Members and Candidates. Now, councillors, we have a recommendation before us that requires an absolute majority that the council adopts the Shire of Donnybrook Balingup Code of Conduct for Council Members, Committee Members and Candidates, inclusive of amendments at attachment 9.3.2.1. Would someone like to move that motion? Councillor Lindeman. Councillor McNabb. And Councillor Lindeman? Nothing to say. Councillor McNabb? Would anyone like to speak for or against the motion? We'll put that to vote. Oh, sorry. Right reply, Councillor Lindemann. We'll put that to vote. All in favour? Item 9.3.3, Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, adoption of terms of reference and transitional arrangements. And again, councillors, we need an absolute majority. I won't read out the full recommendation. We've all had a chance to workshop it and read it. Would someone like to move the executive recommendation? Councillor Hall. And a second? Councillor Patrick. And Councillor Hall.
Nothing further to add on that, really. We had a decent workshop discussing this previously, so yep, happy to support that one.
Thank you. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. Yeah, nothing really specific. I think it's just important to note that, you know, a lot of these changes are to make sure that we're compliant with legislation and requirements, and the terms of reference are being adjusted in accordance with that. So, you know, it's one that we don't have a lot of choice in. It needs to exist and it's got to conform. So, yep, recommend we all support it.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I'll just say that I'm for the motion, and because it's going to bring greater knowledge and greater influence to our operations, and having those independent members being qualified and having finance qualifications and experience in audit will be a huge addition to the way we work. And also the focus on improvement as well. Right reply to Councillor Hall. Okay, we'll put that to vote. All those in favour? Carried. Moving on to item 12, meeting closed to the public. And 12.1, matters which the meeting may be closed. Would councillors like to move that we close the meeting? Councillor Pierick? And seconded, Councillor Hall. Pardon?
Did you put the vote?
We just got the mover and Okay. A reading of the motion is that Council requests the Chief Executive Officer to award RFQ 362 supply of grader to Westrac Proprietary Limited in accordance with their submitted price. And 2, endorses the disposal of its existing Caterpillar 120 metre via public auction in accordance with 3.58 disposing of property as outlined in the Local Government Act 1995 and removed from the Shire's fleet. And with that, we move to item 13, closure. And I can advise that the next agenda briefing will be held on the 15th of April 2026 at 3 p.m. in the Shire of Donnybrook Balingup Chamber, Council Chamber. And I declare the meeting closed at 4:36 p.m.